Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the pre-application webinar for the Yiddish Book Center's Between Two Worlds, Exploring Jewish Culture and Religion Through Yiddish Literature. I'm Sarah Ostman, Deputy Director of the American Library Association's Public Programs Office. Thank you for joining us for this presentation. I'm pleased to be facilitating this webinar for library workers who are interested in applying for the Yiddish Book Center's 2025-2026 Public Libraries program. Before we begin, I have a few notes about this Zoom classroom. Please note that only presenters have microphone access. Closed captioning is enabled. If you like, you can turn on captions by clicking Show Captions at the closed caption logo at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you have questions for the presenters or if you have technical issues, please contact us via Zoom's Q&A feature. And you can use the chat feature. Hopefully many of you have already found it to talk to your fellow attendees. Here's our agenda. First, I will give a brief introduction to the Yiddish Book Center. Then Jennifer Young will share a brief history of the Book Center's Public Libraries program. We will provide an overview of the 2025-2026 Public Libraries program. And we will hear from two librarians that have participated in past iterations of the program. And we will end with time for questions. Located in Amherst, Massachusetts, the Yiddish Book Center celebrates Yiddish literature and culture to advance a fuller understanding of Jewish history and identity. The Book Center was founded in 1980 by Aaron Lansky, then a graduate student of Yiddish literature, and now the center's president. In the course of his studies, he realized that untold numbers of irreplaceable Yiddish books were being discarded by American-born Jews unable to read the Yiddish language. So he launched a nationwide campaign to save the world's remaining Yiddish books, and the Yiddish Book Center was born. I'm going to play you a very short clip about the Yiddish Book Center's origins. It will run just about a minute.
When Lansky first began visiting the homes of many aging Jews around the country to collect material as a graduate student, he was given an estimate. There were probably about 70,000 Yiddish books that could be tracked down.
So I figured, all right, 70,000 books, I could save that in a year or two, and get back to my studies. The only trouble was they were so wildly off. So we've now saved about 1.5 million volumes. And,
Wow.
And we're still going strong. In fact, we saved more books during the pandemic than we had in 10 years previous.
I just got goosebumps.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
When you talk about how many books
Yeah.
have been saved.
Yes. Yes.
Today, beyond the fireproof facility in the basement of the center, there's the main floor, a sprawling space that can be stacked up against the best libraries in the world. The Yiddish Book Center still goes out and collects books, but many are also sent, boxes and boxes every day.
Oh,
This is nice, actually.
that's very nice. It's really unusual.
That is. When Lansky
Since 2020, the Yiddish Book Center has run a special program for public libraries across the United States, which is what brings us here today. The Public Libraries program provides training and resources to enable participating libraries to host reading groups that discuss Yiddish literature and translation, as well as other books that speak to topics like assimilation, identity, and immigration. The Public Libraries program has three main components. The first is in-person training for public library workers at the Yiddish Book Center in Amherst, Massachusetts. The second, participating libraries receive free copies of books for their reading groups. And once they return home, the library workers have 1 year to host their reading groups, during which time they have access to virtual resources and support from the Yiddish Book Center. To tell us more about the background of the Public Libraries program, I'm going to introduce Jennifer Young, Education Program Manager of the Yiddish Book Center. Jennifer?
Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm so pleased to be here, and thank you everyone for joining us. First slide, please. Great, thank you. So this program ran for the first time in 2020. And as you can imagine, most of those programs were virtual in development. And there were 21 libraries that were participating in the program at that time. We ran it again in 2023, and there were 29 libraries participating in the program at that time. And now, thanks to the generous support of the Lilly Endowment, we're able to expand this program significantly. We will run it for another 3 years, and we plan to reach up to 40 libraries per year. So what this means is that participating libraries will come from all kinds of communities across the United States in both urban and rural areas. So big libraries, small libraries, libraries that have significant Jewish audiences, libraries that don't have any Jewish audiences. And the whole idea is to come together and to facilitate these reading groups around Yiddish literature, and to um, potentially develop other opportunities, which we'll hear about in a few minutes from the librarians who can tell us about what they did with these programs. But you can apply for different additional funding, and you can organize additional programming, additional partnerships, and really make this program your own. There's really a lot to do. And what we'll do here at the Book Center is we'll welcome you for your in-person workshop. And as we've done for the past 2 iterations of this program, we'll provide the librarians with training and support, and a lot of information on how to approach the books, meetings with scholars and translators, and we'll also provide you with ongoing resources, and ways to talk to each other, most importantly, and other opportunities to connect your community with the Yiddish Book Center, such as virtual field trips. Next slide, please. So as I said, when you come here, all expenses paid, trip to the Yiddish Book Center, travel and lodging covered. The workshop takes place in November, but it's early November, so the weather should be good. It's beautiful, it's fall, and we'll really dig into the 3 books that will be assigned for your year of the program. And we'll do all kinds of introductions to Yiddish language, literature, and culture. We don't assume that you will know anything about these things. That's our job to introduce it to you and to create all of the experiences that will give you the opportunities to go back to your own home communities and develop these programs for your communities and your audiences. And yeah, you'll meet everyone here, and you'll meet all of us and our staff and our faculty, and you'll also have a chance to look at some portion of the traveling exhibit that we're developing, and some groups will have the opportunity to bring that to their communities as well. I think that's all from me. Thanks, Sarah. You can see here some of the photos from folks that have been here in the past. Lots of opportunities to explore, lots of opportunities to learn.
Thanks, Jennifer. I personally have had the opportunity to go to the Yiddish Book Center, and it's just a beautiful campus, and really an inspiring place. So hope everyone gets to go and enjoys. Next, I'm going to delve a little deeper into what public libraries get and what they are required to do if they participate in this program. Much of this Jennifer just covered, but this way it's all right in front of you. Participating libraries will receive expenses paid for in-person training at the Yiddish Book Center in Amherst in Massachusetts in November 2025. You can see the dates are already scheduled. You'll receive 17 copies of each of 3 Yiddish titles, plus 17 copies of one additional title that you select that you think will speak to your community for use in reading groups. You'll receive up to $2,000 for programming costs. That can cover things like paying honoraria for scholars and performers, purchasing educational materials, or for other activities to be determined in consultation with the Yiddish Book Center. You'll also have access to virtual resources, and as Jennifer mentioned, the opportunity to host a related traveling exhibit. In exchange, libraries are required to send a librarian or reading group facilitator to the 3-day workshop, and organize a reading group to discuss 3 books of Yiddish literature in translation. Those 3 are selected and provided by the Yiddish Book Center, as well as that 4th book selected by the library. A note that libraries may structure the reading group in a way that best serves their users. For examples, the titles can be incorporated into an existing reading group or book club, or you can create a new group. Titles can be discussed in a single program session, or you can spread a title over multiple sessions. Here you can see the 2025-2026 Yiddish language book selections. The theme, as we have mentioned, is Between Two Worlds, exploring Jewish culture and religion. The 3 Yiddish titles will be Tevya the Dairyman by Shalem Aleichem, translated by Eliza Chevrin, The Zelmanyanners, A Family Saga by Moishe Kolbak, translated by Hillel Halkin, and A Jewish Refugee in New York by Katya Molodovsky, translated by Anita Norick. As we have mentioned, you will be choosing a 4th book that speaks to your community. The Yiddish Book Center has created a list of suggested titles that you may want to consider for that 4th title, and my colleague Emily is dropping that link into the chat so you can check out that resource. Applications are now being accepted for the 2025-2026 program. You can apply online at the Yiddish Book Center's website. The link on your screen will take you to the ALA webpage about the project, and then you can just click through to the application. Applications are due by July 14th, and all public libraries in the US and US territories are eligible. I'm really excited and grateful that we have 2 librarians with us today who have participated in past iterations of the Public Libraries program. Rachel Garcia and Amy Waldman come from 2 different library environments. Rachel is from a suburban library with 1 main location, and Amy is from a large urban system with many branches. They have both agreed to join us to share a few minutes about their unique experience with the Yiddish Book Center's program, and I'm very grateful to them both. So first up, we're going to hear from Rachel Garcia. Rachel is the Adult Services Assistant Manager at Wilmette Public Library in Wilmette, Illinois, where she specializes in fiction and reader's advisory. In addition to her collection work, Rachel coordinates and leads library book discussions and assists in the planning of community-wide reading programs. I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm so excited to share my experience with this program and explain how I created the series at my library at Wilmette. Next slide, please. Don't have to keep looking at me. So you'll see here, these are the 3 books that we had as part of our year, Stories of Exile. And then the 4th book, which we chose for our community, was The Painted Drum by Louise Erdrich. And I'll explain why in a minute and go into some of the discussions too in a minute. Okay, next slide. So why did we apply? A board member actually brought this to our attention. She saw an ad on Facebook, I believe, and it was kind of trickled down to me, and I jumped at the opportunity. I'd never written a grant before, but don't let that deter you. I was able to do it basically by myself, and it was a really great learning experience for me. We really thought that the themes of exile, displacement, and forced migration were a universal experience, and there was a great opportunity to create a dialogue around that topic in our community. One of the most interesting things about this program is you get to customize the series for your community. We chose The Painted Drum by Louise Erdrich as our 4th title and decided to connect that to Wilmette's history of displaced indigenous tribes. We were founded, our village, on land awarded as part of a treaty in 1829, and that treaty displaced 3 indigenous tribes in our area to the Upper Great Lakes. And it's an often overlooked fact of our community's history. And in recent years, there's been more interest and attention on this fact, and we thought that this was a great opportunity to further that work that we were doing as a community. We do have a very vibrant Jewish population in Wilmette and the surrounding northern suburbs of Chicago, where we are. The Illinois Holocaust Museum is about 15 minutes away from us. in Skokie, Illinois, where famously Nazis marched in the 70s, or almost did. They wanted to. So we have a pretty deep history with the Jewish community around here. So that was a built-in audience for us. But we still really wanted to reach beyond that. We have very committed lifelong learners in our community who are always very intellectually curious, and we knew that they would really, really jump on this opportunity for this series. Okay, next slide, please. So these are just a few pictures I took when I was at the center. We were really busy learning almost the entire time that we were there, which was amazing. You get a really great tour of the center. You get to see their kind of archives and all their cool treasures, like these typewriters from famous Yiddish authors. And it's a great chance to kind of geek out as a librarian. Um, uh, and there were amazing speakers they arranged for us. There was very thoughtful planning on the part of the center. We all shared ideas and plans, all the librarians. If someone had a concern trying to work out programming or publicity, we all brainstormed as a group, which is a really nice aspect of all coming together as a group. The center was really flexible when it came to supporting us and coming up with ideas and solutions for some of our potential problems. And we really felt that they just wanted us to succeed with this, which was really nice. And by the end, after all of these speakers and learning experiences, I, speaking for myself, felt really prepared going back to my community and starting planning on the series and lead discussions on my own if I had to. So next slide, please. So here are all of the events that we led at Wilmette. We actually decided, because we are in such an amazing location with lots of experts around us at universities, we decided to go with a format where we invited visiting scholars, we have coined it, to come and lead the discussions for the Yiddish titles. I did the Louise Erdrich title myself. We were really lucky that Jessica Curzane, who wrote the afterword for On the Landing by Yenta Mash, is a professor at University of Chicago. So she came to our library and taught and led the discussion on that. Professor Ana Elena Torres was also at University of Chicago. And then we had a virtual discussion with Professor Matthew Johnson from The Ohio State University, which was really nice. So yeah, this became a really successful model for us because it just works so well with this series. The format of the discussions are totally up to you. All the professors presented really interesting historical information and provided really great context for the discussion itself. Something that I feel really proud about is that some patrons were really dedicated to the series and attended all of the discussions, which was really nice. And overall, we had more than our usual attendance for book discussions. A couple really interesting takeaways from some of the discussions I just wanted to talk about. So In the Land of the Postscript by Chava Rosenfarb, many of our participants related to the experience and the guilt of surviving the Holocaust and the generational trauma that brings. They had a lot of personal experience with that, which was a great conversation that we had. One of the participants was even, she was a widow, and her husband was sent to Montreal after surviving the camps and lived in the same neighborhood as Chava Rosenfarb and the characters that she wrote about in the Land of the Postscripts. That was really fascinating. Even our most challenging book, which was the Gladstein Chronicles, was a really interesting discussion, and Professor Torres made that very accessible for our audience. And then you'll see I did some supporting programs. One was kind of built in with an already successful local history and genealogy kind of series that my colleague presents. I connected with her while I was writing the grant, and we came up with some ideas of how she could support us. Jennifer presented a virtual tour of the Yiddish Book Center. That was very exciting. And then most importantly was our partnership with the Mitchell Museum of the American Indian in Evanston. And the director of operations there came and talked about the Indigenous people's history of Chicagoland and our area. And we had a really great turnout for that. And people, I think, came away from that with kind of a new outlook on our area. So I think that's it. Next slide, please. So this is just a little bit about our promotion. The most important thing is we wanted people to know how special this series was, that it was an opportunity for people that wasn't just usual fare from the library. We told people we applied for a grant, that we were awarded a grant, that I went to Amherst and I did this workshop, and I think that went a long way in getting people excited. Our series ran from September to December. And during that time, we had a continual presence in the library promoting the series. And we also created this web page with the resources that the center gave us and all the discussions and events and promoting the series, which I think was really helpful too. Okay, next. And lastly, these are just a few kind of notes from people who came to the series. People really felt that they had gained something valuable by attending, which was amazing. I'd say almost all of the participants, even though many of them were Jewish, had never read translated Yiddish literature before. And they all agreed that they were really had learned something amazing and were recommending these titles to their family and friends, which was amazing. There was going to be a wider readership for these titles. We even got a $600 donation to the library from someone who participated in the series because they were just so happy that we had brought this to the library. And I had a wonderful experience, and I hope that I can apply again in the future and do it again. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Rachel. That was really great information. Next, I'm going to introduce Amy Waldman. Amy is the adult reference librarian at Good Hope Library in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Amy received her master's degree in library science with a concentration in information organization from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee after working as a journalist, retail sales associate, and student services coordinator at a technical college, all of which inform her work as a public librarian. She is the author of We Had Fun and Nobody Died, The Adventures of a Milwaukee Music Promoter, published in 2024 by the Wisconsin Historical Society Press. Amy, I love your book's title, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I want to start by echoing everything that Rachel said about the Yiddish Book Center experience. I talked a little bit about it, but more formally, but it was amazing. And she didn't talk about the food, but the food was also really, really, really good. Next slide, please. So MPL was part of the 2020 and 2023 reading groups. In 2019, when the opportunity presented itself, I actually got a random email from somebody and asked my manager, and she said, sure, go for it. So I called our system programming person, and she said, oh, I'm working on that proposal. And I wanted to have this done because I was at a branch where we didn't have a book club. And for me, this was a great way of jumpstarting a book club. Christina was also working on the ALA Americans in the Holocaust proposal, which was due at the same time. And she knew I had grant writing experience, so she asked me to take the lead on writing the Coming to America grant. She had already picked the fourth book, which was The Late Homecomer by Kaukalia Yang, because we have a large Hmong community in Milwaukee. And I was really excited to write the grant because, next slide, please. That's our publicity. I'm going to actually go back to that. Next slide after that. And yep, because I really like writing grants, and it was a great way of learning more about the library system. So we got the grant. Christina went to the Yiddish Book Center in January 2020, and we met shortly after she returned. We talked about the author visit. We talked about other ideas about how to do the book group. And then the pandemic happened. So Christina was able to very quickly pivot on a system-wide level to virtual programming, and our reading groups met virtually from August to November of that year, and we had a virtual author visit from Kaukalia Yang. Our publicity, and that would be 2 slides ago, if you would be so kind, was very robust. We had a separate landing page on the library website, which you can see on the left, and an ad campaign on the local public radio station. Attendees at that time included a woman born in a European refugee camp in 1948 who came to the US with her parents when she was 4, and her perspective added a lot to the group. At the end of that final session, the group asked to continue, and in February of 2021, the Coming to America book club met for the first time from 5:30 to 6:30 on the third Wednesday, just like the reading group, and we discussed The House of Broken Angels by Luis Alberto Urrea. Can you forward a couple slides? Go 3, I think. Yep, there you go. So in 2022, I was the lead on the Stories of Exile grant. And at that point, I wanted to lead an in-person discussion group. Wisconsin had recently welcomed 13,000 Afghan refugees to Fort McCoy, and some of them had settled in Milwaukee. So I chose A Fort of Nine Towers by Afghan writer Qais Akbar Omar as our 4th book. The Yiddish Book Center seminar, as Rachel has already said, was incredible. Among the highlights was a screening of Wer wird bleiben, a documentary by Krista Whitney, who is a staffer at the Yiddish Book Center and a documentary filmmaker. The scholarly lectures and talks were incredible, and getting to meet librarians from all over the country and talking through potential ideas in real time was absolutely invaluable. And the Yiddish Book Center, we formed a Gmail chat group for us after, and so we were able to talk to each other that way, and that really helped a lot, especially to meet some of the challenges. Unlike Rachel, we don't have as many universities in Milwaukee, and there were no topic experts at UWM's Jewish Studies faculty to discuss the Gladstein Chronicles, which was the most challenging of that season's books. And I was hoping for a scholar to be around to lead that discussion. Also, our communications and marketing director had left the library, and we didn't have a new person on board in time to do the kind of publicity that had been done before. As to the Gladstein Chronicles issue, it turned out there was a librarian in New Jersey, one of the other people who had been at the Yiddish Book Center, who had the same issue. And we did a Zoom meeting and quickly realized that thanks to the seminars and to our own reading and our own experience, we knew more than we realized, and we both left much more comfortable leading those discussions. Partnering with the Jewish Museum Milwaukee, who provided space, and the Coalition for Jewish Learning, which sponsored docent-led tours of the 2 museum exhibits, Women Pulling at the Threads of History and The Book Smugglers, during the 5-month reading period, generated additional publicity as both partners publicized the event. And because I had talked about the documentary, the museum brought Krista in as part of the Book Smugglers exhibit. I'm going to wind up with 3 final things. One is that, next slide, actually. Next slide. After. Yep, sorry, that one. Nope, after the one, sorry, last slide. They're a little out of order, but you can't predict what might be happening in the world between the planning and occurrence of your discussion groups. Those are just some pictures of the Yiddish Book Center to look at. In 2020, we had the pandemic. In 2023, our first discussion happened 2 weeks after the Hamas raid into Israel that set off the Gaza war. And that 100% had an impact on our discussions. I don't know if it was the same for you, Rachel. Food. We met from 12:30 to 2 on Sundays, so we served bagels and coffee at all our meetings. But I was also able to bring food that related to some of the specific discussions. For the Yenta Mosh book, she referenced Mama Liga, which is a corn pudding, a couple of times. And I found a recipe and made it and brought it to the session where we discussed her book. And one of the attendees remembered that his Romanian mother made it when he was a child. And then another attendee started talking about how her mother made it, and they were comparing recipes. That was pretty cool. And And the Gladstein Chronicles is partially set in a Polish spa. And an article about the book identified the real spa on which the fictional one was based, and it turned out they sold the water. So I ordered a couple of bottles of Polish spa water, and when we discussed the Gladstein Chronicles, the second part, we actually got to all drink spa water while we talked. And now go back one slide, because that is the most enduring legacy of the Yiddish Book Center for us at MPL. Our Coming to America Book Club is still going strong. It meets on the third Wednesday of the month from 5:30 to 6:30, just like our reading groups, which is tonight if anybody wants to join. And we will be discussing Ayelet Tzabari's wonderful book, Songs for the Brokenhearted. And that's all I got.
Thanks so much, Amy, and thank you to both of you for making the time to come talk to us about the experience. This is really helpful, I think, to get that firsthand knowledge. So that is the end of our formal presentation, but we do have time for questions. I see that there have been some questions submitted in the Q&A. Thank you to Jeff Hayes for answering those from the Yiddish Book Center. If you have other questions, please enter them in the Q&A now, and we will ask them aloud to our panelists. I will start us off with one question, and this is for Rachel and Amy. You both talked about community partnerships. How did you find those community partners, and what was the process like working with them?
I can go first, Amy, if that's okay. I would say that was one of my challenges. Like, we almost had too many choices to partner with. I did reach out to the Illinois Holocaust Museum. I didn't hear anything. I tried again. I didn't hear anything. It would have been nice if I had some kind of hookup there, but I did not. I'd say the Mitchell Museum is such a small museum that it was really easy to connect with them. And that was really helpful. I did connect with some temple book clubs, which some are very strong along the North Shore here. And a few of them did advertise the series. I didn't finish the tracking to see if anyone actually came from that advertising. But I would just say start early. I would even start like while you're writing the grant and you're formulating that fourth title and the connection that you want to make to that fourth title. Just reach out and try to establish those as soon as you can, and you'll have a better chance at success.
Those are really good points. So the Jewish Museum Milwaukee had reached out to the library. We had done a collaboration with them on one of their other exhibits about the history of scrap metal, and had asked us to be part of that. So we had kind of an established relationship, although so I reached out to their education person early on, and he was interested. It was a function of wanting to have kind of a central location for the discussions, and to do it on a Sunday, because I felt like that was when the most people would be able to be reached. The Coalition for Jewish Learning just happened. That was just straight up dumb luck, because the day I met with the education director at the museum, the Coalition for Jewish Learning head was at the same table and jumped on it and said this would be a great opportunity for our teachers. So that's how that happened. I knew Joel Berkowitz, who's the head of the Jewish Studies Department, and we had talked about doing things with Coming to America. We were going to partner with UWM, and then of course the pandemic kind of made that a little less easy, and Christina was the lead on that. But I know Joel, and so when I approached him early on, he was up for it. And then when I met with him after and said, hey, this is what I could really use help with, he said, not so much. But reaching out to the partners and having partners and kind of knowing your audience too, because my program was a lot different than Rachel's. And so having an idea even if it's sort of broad brush of what you're thinking you want to do and reaching out to those partners in advance is really helpful.
Thank you both. I have a question that may be best answered by Jennifer. The question is there a deadline by which the programming should be offered? And Jennifer, my understanding is that after the librarians return home, they have 12 months to complete their programming. This individual is asking, the library I manage is in a community with a large population, so I'm interested in applying, but it is currently being renovated, and I'm not sure when we will reopen. Is this perhaps a chance to mention the 2 rounds that are going to be coming up in the next couple of years?
That's a great point, Sarah. Yeah, so there are 12 months from the time of the workshop in which to run the programming. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff. And then the program will run for 2 years after that as well. So there's 2 other opportunities besides this year to apply for the program. So if it doesn't work out for your library for this year, don't worry about it. Stay in touch with us and keep an eye out for the ALA for information about the future iterations of the program.
Thanks, Jennifer. This is a question for Rachel and Amy. What times and days of the week did you hold discussions, and did those times work for you?
That's a good question. So we did try and diversify the times because we wanted to draw in as large of an audience as we could. And there's definitely at our library a difference between like daytime retiree set and like the slightly younger evening working set that comes to discussions. So I think we did the 2 in-person ones, like maybe 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, and then our virtual program discussion was in the evening on Zoom. And then I believe our 4th title was in the morning during our usual monthly book discussion. And I think it worked well. Like I said, we had a core group that came to each discussion, but then there were, other people that kind of dropped in depending on the title.
So for Coming to America, I didn't actually choose that time. But I think during the pandemic, everybody was home anyway. So I think that Christina picked a very good time. And the fact that I'm still drawing between 8 and at the height 26 people when I have an author visit speaks to the wisdom of that particular scheduling for a virtual program. When I was thinking about the group, it's the same thing as Rachel, is how I have a friend who, slight digression, when she had little kids at home and had 3 of them, she said, every night I make dinner and somebody's left out, somebody's upset. And that's library programming, is like, you think if you do it at night, the people who either have to put kids to bed or don't drive at night are going to be left out. And if you do it during the day, people who work. And for a program like this, if you have an observant Jewish community, if you do it on a Saturday, you're leaving those people out. So Sunday afternoon was the most logical time to do it, and to do it and for us, because I'm in a large system, there's some flexibility I have and some that I felt just was going to be easier system-wide to do it at a set time so people could have it on their calendars.
Thank you. Ben has a question. The Jewish population in my area is less Yiddishkeit than in other areas. Did anyone have the experience of introducing other Jewish people to Yiddish language and culture, possibly for the first time? I see you both nodding, Rachel and Amy.
Yes. I mean, we have lots of Orthodox communities around us that I believe speak Yiddish usually, but that's not our immediate population in Wilmette. We have mostly, I would say culturally Jewish population, not necessarily religious. Many remember their grandparents speaking Yiddish in the household. and know, you know, the popular Yiddish terms. But like I said, had never read Yiddish literature. You don't need to really know anything about the language to get something out of this at all. You will learn a lot about Yiddish culture at the workshop, but y- it's like the books are the frame through which you enter that. So there's no prerequisite, I would say, um, to language prerequisite.
I would agree with that, and I would add too that one of the people who came to every one of my sessions was a Ukrainian Orthodox woman. So somebody who wasn't even Jewish and was very, very engaged by the material.
We have a question about incorporating the Yiddish titles into existing programs and book clubs. Can you provide some examples of how this has worked in the past? Rachel and Amy, I'm not sure you had experience with that. Do you, or perhaps Jennifer or Jeff, recall any other participating libraries that incorporated the titles into a standing book club that they already had?
There must have been. Um, I included my fourth title as part into one of my reoccurring clubs, and I kind of labeled it as like a special one. So that's up to your like marketing department and how they want to label that in your advertising. Um, but you can kind of have special editions of your clubs or just tell your clubs that you're participating in this and you know the next few months you'll be exploring this topic. There were definitely people who did fit it into their existing book groups. I don't remember who exactly.
And to the person who asked that question, if you would like to reach out to email publicprograms@ala.org, we can try to brainstorm a little bit on the side. And Emily, if you wouldn't mind dropping that general email address in the chat so everyone has it. Another question, for people that haven't written grants before, any tips and tricks for success here?
I can do that one because actually when I said I had grant writing experience, the job I had before this was grant funded and I wrote the grant that funded my job. So um so this grant is a very friendly grant. It asks you, and anybody can email me too. I think my contact information is here if you have any more questions, but generally, when you're writing any grant, you want to answer the questions. You just want to just look at the questions and answer the questions as they're asked. Stay in your word count. And tell a story. You want to tell the story of as much as you want. You want to connect with what you're going to be doing with what the funder is asking you to do. And show how what you have in your community is going to work to make that happen, to help realize their vision. Does that make sense to everybody?
Thanks, Amy. That's very helpful. I'm also dropping a link in the chat to a resource that we have created in the ALA Public Programs Office, Mastering Grant Writing, 11 Tips for Success. But I also completely agree with everything that Amy said. Taking a look at the remaining questions, Lynn had a question for patrons who want to learn some basic Yiddish. Is there any guidance from the Yiddish Book Center on finding a facilitator for that type of related program?
Yeah, absolutely. We can help with that. We have an Institute of Yiddish Language Learning. And so if that was something you were interested in, you could just write it into the grant and then we could get in touch with you and plan it with you after the grant has been granted.
Two questions on a similar topic. One is, what is the reading level for the books, possibly for high school participants? And the other is, did you engage with teens and children, or did you focus on adults? Maybe we could speak to the upcoming book theme first regarding what age appropriate they would be. Is that a question for Jennifer?
Yeah, sorry, my mute button was being silly.
Okay.
Um, I would say that of the three books, the Jewish Refugee in New York is probably the most high school friendly. And the Zelmanyanners is doable. And the Tevye book is the most difficult because it's the oldest and it sort of takes a little bit more getting used to. But it is the basis for Fiddler on the Roof. So there are lots of ways to tie in all kinds of interesting stories and media into that book in order to do it justice and to make it fun and exciting for all kinds of groups. So I think yeah, depending on your high school or teen group, if you know them well and you know that they're intellectually curious and interested in diving into new topics, then I think that there's a good chance that they would enjoy these books.
Thanks, Jennifer. We also have a question from a librarian in Utah who says that they are interested in reaching out to a larger population of the state. They said that they have a very small Jewish community around them. They say, any advice how to appeal to a very high population of the state's dominant religion, which is Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I don't know off the top of my head, but that is the kind of question that we like to get as a program, and that we would be more than happy to set up a meeting and chat and to think about that in more detail with an individual who has a question like that. That's definitely within the realm of possibility for us to do when someone's applying for the grant.
I would also add that we had librarians at our cohort from places you would never think, like a small town in Georgia,
In Amarillo, Texas.
everywhere. And we were really leaning on each other and helping them, trying to brainstorm how they could market this, how they could bring it. And I think really leaning into the themes is what is gonna make this successful. These are universal themes across cultures, across religions, across history. And you get to be creative with that. And it's almost like the aspect that it's Jewish and in Yiddish is like secondary to the core of the story and the heart of the story. So I would just take that frame when you're thinking
Exactly.
about it.
And I was thinking, Rachel, when we were all doing our programs, we were all writing to each other after they happened or about what they happened and showing each other the publicity. And some of those tiny places, oh my gosh, they just went. They had incredible turnout. They had incredibly imaginative programming. People were fascinated. And I mean, remember seeing some of those pictures from
I would say, don't underestimate your community. They
Agreed.
might be really interested in this. It is fascinating. So as long as they are interested in learning something new, I think that's the main. Hopefully they are.
I think that's a fantastic answer. And the only thing I would add is that these three books, even though the theme is a bit broad, Between Two Worlds could be a lot of different things. We intentionally picked books that are all about families and family dynamics and working out differences across generations. And the books are pretty tightly connected in those themes. And so obviously we felt that would be a universal that would be appealing to a lot of different groups.
That's a really good point. I was just going to say that at our discussion of the Chava Rosenfarb books, we had two therapists in the room, and oh my goodness, it was like they did a whole like therapy breakdown of the characters.
That's great. And I just want to call out Tom's comment in the chat. Combine the program with food, a great 2-for-1. And Amy, I know you had some success in doing that, so food always helps. One more question. Would Primo Levi's Drowned and the Saved be a good title to consider as a fourth title? Is anyone familiar with that? I think we are not familiar with that, Tom, but if you would like to email the publicprograms@ala.org email address, we can try to get you an answer. And also, could we use a play, something like Lost in Yonkers or Brighton Beach Memoirs?
I would think, I mean, I don't work for the Yiddish Book Center, but I think as long as they could get 17 copies of it, right? That would be okay. I think that is a really creative way to explore the fourth title. They'll basically let you do whatever you feel is right for your community, is the answer.
And we can look into those questions in detail offline.
Yeah, I would just add anything that you feel like is really valuable to your community, do that. The fourth title is really up to you to figure out a way to bring it into your community and to really bridge with those other books in a way that feels most valuable and meaningful to the group that you're working with.
One more question, and I think this is our last one. Will we have guidance on handling the discussions if very sensitive topics or patron comments arise?
Yeah, I think that that's something that we'll build into our workshops and into the professional development aspects as we go along. I think, particularly at this moment in history, I think that's a really important, it's a very good question. And we're going to talk more about how exactly we want to be able to provide resources for the groups to do that. But we're definitely thinking about it, and we'll provide something that will help you with that.
Well, thank you all so much. Presenters, we really appreciate you being here, and all of our attendees, thank you for joining us. Please do reach out with any questions. Again, you can reach the ALA Public Programs Office at publicprograms@ala.org. We can connect you with the Yiddish Book Center, or go to that link on the Yiddish Book Center page and you can reach out to them directly. Either way is fine. But either way, we are excited to hopefully get a lot of your applications for this program. And good luck and thank you for joining us today.